Hi, friends, and welcome into the Transgender Show. We are not starting the show officially yet. I'm just coming in to say hi and give you the lay of the land, so it's not part of our recording. Makes editing easier. I'm so glad to see you and have you all here with me tonight, as always. For those of you who might be new here, might be friends of Jailyn's who are coming in, we go through our set of questions. Takes about an hour and go all throughout Jailyn's gender journey adventure, and then we'll take a break, and then after that we'll come back. In that time after the break, we'll answer all of your questions, and I'll relay all of your comments to her. During the show, though, she can't see the chat, so it'll have to be after the break that we'll get to that. But we do get to all of your questions. So if it's about Jailyn, if it's a question to Jailyn, a question to myself, go ahead and put it in chat. The mods will grab it or I'll grab it, and we will get to it after the break. We get to 100% of those. So it's wonderful. Again, it's great to have you here. I don't think I have anything else I need to tell you. I'm sure after I do the official start to the show, I'll think of all those things. But for now, let's just try it and jump into the show. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. I'm very excited tonight to have Jailyn on the show. Jailyn was born in Southern California, then moved to Virginia, Italy, Argentina, Tennessee, and Kentucky in the subsequent 30-ish years. She completed medical school and an emergency medicine residency in 2015 and subsequently settled back in San Diego with her wife and 3 kids. In her free time, she enjoys family time, reading, Pilates, Drag Race, and Disney. And this is the point where I normally bring the guest on, but I did not like that intro read at all. And because it's my show and I like to do things well here, I mean, you've already seen me mess up. You've seen how the hot dogs are made, but I'm going to go ahead and take it again because I can. So bear with me. Let's try it. The countdown even stuttered weird. So I'm just going to run it again to make sure that we're really running smoothly, and then we'll get started. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. I'm excited to welcome to the show a new friend, Jailyn. Jailyn Avila was born in Southern California, then moved to Virginia, Italy, Argentina, Tennessee, and Kentucky in the subsequent 30-ish years. She completed medical school and an emergency medicine residency in 2015 and subsequently settled back in San Diego with her wife and 3 kids. In her free time, she enjoys family time, reading, Pilates, Drag Race, and Disney. So everybody, welcome to the show, Jailyn.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It is wonderful to have you here. I see one other thing that's not going great. Your Instagram name has disappeared entirely. I will get that fixed at some point when you're answering one of the questions. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it with my favorite question. How did you find a name that suited you well?
Wow. So that was kind of like a complex thing. You know how like sometimes you feel like there are certain signs in your life? I have always had a J name. I've actually had, this is my 4th name I've legally had. And they've all started with J's. And so it was actually easy to kind of go with a J name. I went through a whole like internet search. It took me like a month, honestly. When we finally settled on Jailyn, it also made it easier because one of my penultimate name was J. So Jailyn actually works for people who knew me before. So it was convenience and it was kind of pretty. It wasn't something outlandish, which no shade on anybody else who like enjoys very interesting names, like fully down for that. It's just not my personality. But it's not a common name. Like I don't feel like I'm like a Jamie or a Tiffany or a Heather. So yeah, that's the long version of how I picked my name.
Well, I love that. I think it was probably the week before we met that I had just added, I just changed my last name for, you know, being out in public, sort of a stage name to Jailyn. And when I met you, we found out that my new last name and your name were spelled almost identically, just with a J instead of a K. And so
Yeah.
that was our quick bonding moment. So I love that that journey of going through and deciding that you wanted to stay with something with your original in your original realm, something with the same initial, but
Mhm.
I do identify with the struggle of finding the right name after pouring through several of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of it's almost like pressure because the name you were given at birth, it's like someone gave it to you and you just like have it. And so to like after have to think through and be like, this cost a few $100s and it was a lot of work and I had to like do the court stuff. I want to pick one that I'm gonna be happy with and I can stick with forever. So it was a fun process that I honestly enjoyed.
So for my next set of questions, I like to kind of start backwards, starting from sort of that egg crack moment, that moment when you realized that you were transgender, that was the term that applied to you. When was that for you?
That was in 2021 when I finally like was able to like say it out loud. Um, and it happened basically like everything was going great. I finally was able to move back to my home state. I was happy. I should have been happy. I had a good job. Like I was academically successful. I had a good job and amazing family. But I just found myself being like angrier and angrier and angrier. And um, finally went to therapy, which I should have done from like the start of my adult life. But finally went to therapy and was able to kind of realize that, and that was essentially the underlying like problem of my unhappiness in life. And so 2021 is probably 2020, 2021 around there. And it took a bit of time to get to the point where I was like, I'm gonna transition. Because I'd kind of like realized that like I could be a thing inside and not show it on the outside. And then I started kind of like experimenting and trying things out and testing the waters and um slowly I'm here.
Once you got to that point and you were able to look back, I love that sort of moment, that exploration where now you've got the hindsight and you look back
Mhm.
at your life up to this point and you can see the breadcrumbs, you can see the signs now more clearly. What were some of
Mhm.
those and some of the kind of key ones for you that now looking back you're able to illuminate as signs that you were trans?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important about you're whatever 22, 23 or whatever. But to us that are pushing 40, um I think that I didn't have a lot of examples of people like in their 30s and 40s that had transitioned. And so I didn't even like know that it was a thing, but I knew that I never got along. I never really had a best friend because I couldn't make friends with men because I didn't understand them and they were weird to like the way my brain thought. And always was kind of attracted towards feminine things exclusively. The one exception was I love the X-Men. So I like played with action figures growing up, but besides that, I always kind of like pushed towards that area. And I grew up in a evangelical Christian immigrant military household. Like my dad was in the Navy. Yeah, it was all of the bad things. Not there. No, listen. There's nothing bad about either of those things, but sometimes, at least in my experience, those things together create an environment where one is not allowed to express themselves. And I'm sure there are a lot of examples of that environment where kids are happy, but I was not one of those examples. So I didn't have the ability to kind of express this part of me and explore it. And instead, like a good a good evangelical Christian military immigrant household, I was taught to repress it and push it down and yeah, I guess tough it out. The time where it became very difficult was in my actually it was in med school. It started in college, but I was outside of my like kind of I was raised. It was Seventh Day Adventist was how I was raised, and I was homeschooled, which is I joke it's like why I'm so weird is because I was homeschooled, but I was homeschooled, classic. And when I went to college, and it was an Adventist college, I went to La Sierra in Riverside, California. And I was exposed to like new concepts and the idea that people can be different and that not everything that I was taught was correct. And that things were modifiable, things weren't absolute. And so it kind of started planting the seeds, which interestingly enough, at least in the short term, made me more unhappy because it wasn't, I had a hard time pushing it down because I'm like, but why can't I dress like a woman? But why? Right. And so it just continued on. I got into med school and I learned how to think scientifically. And then it got worse. And then I married my wife back in almost a little over 15 years ago. And a year after we got married, I told her I cross-dressed, which is not very fair of me to do it after we got married. But we worked through it, and then slowly I realized that I wasn't a cross-dresser, that I was trans, which people not in our space don't always know the difference. But yeah, two completely different things.
Mm. I'm just so fascinated, and we'll get back to it, I'm sure, at some point. That I love talking about intersectionalities and how they affect, our perspective on the world, but particularly when it comes to being trans. And I love, the three of the key ones that you list there are, Christian, military, and immigrant. And I sort of was thinking about those when I broke it down. Christian, if you're in the LGBT community, you're going to hell. Like you can't do that. That's the worst one. So like that's whatever. Military, you're not allowed to be. You're not allowed to be LGBT.
Well,
Like that's
femininity is weakness.
there's that
so
too.
that was the thing I was taught growing up.
Yeah, that. Yeah, I guess the military has a fair bit of the misogyny built in there as well. Yeah. And then for the immigrant crossover here, as an immigrant, you're taught to not draw attention to yourself.
Right.
And so you've got these three parts of your identity that are fighting your trans identity, all from slightly different angles. And I can't even imagine how brutal it was to break through from that. And that leads really well into the next topic where we start to talk about coming out. I'll just put it on the table to start. Were you able to maintain any kind of relationship with your family?
Medium. So it's always kind of confusing to me how when supplied with overwhelming evidence to the contrary, people kind of like hold true to their beliefs just because it's more comfortable, maybe. So with my parents, I don't really speak with either of them for different reasons. But they have a very hard time with it. My generation, so my parents are immigrants from South America, Venezuela to be specific. And with the generation below, so my generation, people don't care. Like my family, that's my generation, like doesn't really care. Like they're actually pretty accepting, like very accepting actually. I do have a older cousin who is essentially like an older brother to me. And it's amazing because he's one of the kindest, most nurturing people I know. But he has such a hard time with my pronouns. But it's not, he's trying, and it's not like he's not doing it to be a jerk. He's just like, it's hard for him because he was what he came over like later in his life, like when he was like a teenager. So just new concepts are these concepts are so foreign that it's just a little difficult for him. But my generation has been great. The generation above me, my parents' generation, it's honestly, I want to say it's 25 no and 75% yes. So they've actually been pretty, I think, accepting about it, at least outwardly.
Mhm. Yeah, and then there are two follow-up questions that you might have been kind of like pushing on there, that I like to ask. Let's go with the first one. Like, who was the most difficult for you to come out to?
Successfully or in general?
Oh,
Right, because like there was one that I came out to and I expected her to be supportive and she still isn't, and that it was difficult. And then the one where I came out and I was the most scared to, that was the most supportive, was my wife. So
mm.
which one?
The latter, yeah, looking to come out, because this show is to appeal to people who are looking to come out, who are new to it, and still working through some of these things. So what I want to know is, like, what were you most afraid of going into coming out? And it sounds like it was in speaking with your wife.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she has been just like the most amazing thing. I'm so fortunate to have like met her kind of by chance 18 years ago, and she really didn't know anything about the queer community and was it was kind of like adjacent, but not quite as bad. But she was raised in a essentially like um, a kind of white collar, salt of the earth type family. That I'm just trying to think of how to like describe it. Like basically, like she was the first. She and her brother were the first ones in that entire family ever to go to college, and they're like, I don't know, like 20th generation Americans or whatever. Like they've been here forever, and they were the first ones. So she had never been exposed to it, and that was the most terrifying one. And honestly, like I didn't even bring it up because I was so scared to lose it. And it's not her fault. Like it's my fault. But it was one of the things that actually like delayed my transition because I was so scared of losing her that I didn't even really tell her. Although I did, like, with when I started with the cross dressing, I said it was just cross dressing and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like she's actually the second question as well, because the other question that I love to ask is the more hopeful version of that, which is, did you have anybody when you came out that supported you in a way that you weren't expecting?
Yes. So it was and really like I kind of went into it knowing that it wouldn't be 100% like success rate, but it was way higher than I thought. And it's interesting because I think it was two things. The first one is, I think being authentic to yourself, while being respectful of other people. Saying like, "Hey, this is me. I don't judge you. I'm not trying to change any part of you. I just need you to understand this is me." Kind of doing that, and then I mean, I don't know, it's probably a bunch of other factors. It was nowhere, like it wasn't even close to as hard as I thought it was going to be. I mean, we hear all the bad stories, and yeah, they exist, but for the most part, it has been actually amazing. And I wish that I had been able to figure this out earlier, because I always mention that a random, Tuesday afternoon is better than my best day pre-transition. Like the most happy I was before, it doesn't even compare to an average day now. Um, so yeah, I guess to answer your question directly, the thing that was the most shocking, I lived most recently, I moved from Kentucky, which is not known to be a very, like kind of like liberal or progressive state. I lived in Lexington. Um, and you try to do what you can. I wanted to make some friends, so I started playing hockey in my mid 30s, and that was a very like interesting and fun thing to like figure out. But I mean, and I never, like I said, I was homeschooled, so I never like went. I never went to a like locker room, and the college I went to didn't really have locker rooms, as it was a small Christian college. Um, so to hear the way that like men talked to each other, like, at each other and about other people was, like, shocking to me. It was like, I can't believe, like, people actually say this, like, this is crazy. That was one of the most shocking ones, is that, like, the people I played hockey with were super supportive, and I did not expect that at all. And honestly, I've been back to Kentucky a few times since I transitioned, and a lot of my old friends are like, it's either they're like, "Yeah, like, we knew you were like this, like, I'm happy you figured it out." And then the other half are like, "Yeah, we love you, we don't really care. Sorry if I mess up the pronouns, I'm trying." So it was, a lot easier than it wasn't easy, but it was a lot, less painful than I thought it was gonna be.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. I love that. And I also love that, similarity to my story. That was a big, big thing for me, is just throughout my life. And it didn't really illuminate the fact that I was trans. It just made me feel strange and make me be really confused about just life in general, because I could never understood men, the way they talked, and the way they specifically the way they looked at and talked about women.
Oh my gosh,
Like,
yeah,
I
that
could
was
see a
great.
woman was beautiful, and I would like
Mhm.
lust after her in a very emotional way, and
Yeah,
theirs was like this weird, purely physical, like animal kind of. It was
yeah,
so strange, and I'm like, why do I not understand this? What is wrong with me?
yeah,
And I love hearing other girl stories, and that have that kind of similar thing of like,
mhm.
I just couldn't understand them.
Yeah, no, no, just in general, like, just things that they enjoy to do, and, like, sports, and I tried really, really, really hard, but I could never figure it out. It's kinda interesting, like, when I was in college, I had a lot of, like, friends that were girls, um and that was actually something that was, like, when I was dating Shanna, it was something that she wasn't accustomed to, because all of the men in her kind of experience in her life were very macho men that, like, were kind of like the caricature of what a man, is. And so the fact that I had a lot of friends that were girls was like a new concept, and honestly a little challenging at the beginning. But it honestly, like, most of the I mean, all of my friends that were girls, like, I didn't want to date them. I just wanted to hang out with them because I liked them and I understood them better.
Yeah. There's so much to dive into with your relationship with your wife. Um, let's start at the beginning. When coming out to her and having some of these initial conversations, um, what were some of the initial reactions? What were some of the things that you can remember that you kind of had to work through in just that very initial period?
Yeah, so the big thing, if I, can give anybody advice, it's, don't drop 0 hints and then greet your wife at the door wearing one of her dresses. Don't do that, because it's very shocking. So that was how I kinda came out to her initially, and of course, like, I would have been very confused and very shocked at, like, if the roles were reversed. Um, but, I mean, to, like, her credit, like, she's like, "Okay, like, need a second. Let's talk about this. Tell me more. What is this?" And her first question, and it's because she had, really, I mean, she knew a couple of her friends in high school were lesbian, but besides that, she'd never really interacted with the queer community at all. So, as most people who don't know, like, her first question was, "Do you still find me attractive? Do you like men?" And the answer still is like, "No, I don't find men particularly attractive." Sexually, like, I can definitely say, like, this dude, like, is gorgeous. Like, I can say that, but it's not that a sexual thing. And I still, am sexually attracted to women. So once we kind of got through that, it was a lot less difficult, to kind of, like, progress. The other thing that came up, which it's something that in retrospect, if I could write myself a letter, I'd say, sit her down in regular clothes and explain, and then later show her the other clothes. That probably would have been a better idea. The other thing is to, like, very much, iterate strongly, that it is not about, like, it's not about her. So it's not something, a deficit in her from her part to me, that is the reason that I am who I am. One of the things she was concerned about was, is she not pretty enough for me, that I need to find something pretty like in my life, cross-dressing. So that was kind of like the second thing that we had to kind of like work through and be like, no, I think you're gorgeous. I think you're so gorgeous that I want to wear what you're wearing because it looks so beautiful. It was that, which is what it is. So that was one of the other things that I wish I would have been able to articulate better, because it would have compressed the amount of time it took me to come out, honestly, if I just would have been able to explain that to her well, like anticipate that basically.
Mm. Yeah, for me, when I told her after we moved in together, and I showed her my stash. At that point, it was pretty much just underwear.
Mm.
And she even kind of laughed it off of like, this was something that you were holding, but you were kind of hiding from me. Like, it's not that big a deal. And so I felt this
Mm.
huge amount of relief. The next day, she felt she was in a different, she wasn't talking to me. She felt like I had sort of betrayed her in keeping something from her.
Mm.
And then on top of that, she wasn't sure it was something she could deal with. So unfortunately, at that state where I was trying to find confidence. I still had no idea that I was trans. I was just trying to find some level of acceptance and the the proof, the validation that I could still be lovable as
Right.
me. And so her reaction really set me back and backwards, where I had gotten up the courage to come out to her. And after that I went way back in the closet, and we just almost didn't talk about it for the rest of our relationship, which from
Wow.
that point was probably another like 10 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and you talk about writing the letter. I think what I would have needed to have known is like, this is something to revisit, like give her a couple days and
Mhm.
then come back to it and sit down and have the conversation. Don't pull back into your shell and feel like you need to hide it. Like this is the nail in the coffin. Like, I'm never going to be accepted as this. You've got to give people patience. I talk about patience on this show all the time. And really try and reopen that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I could not have said it better. Um, One of the things too is that, like, I think going into it, and it's just because I never was given the tools to like articulate well, to even name emotions. Like I was never allowed to do that. Everything was like, you're gonna be this way. And I would feel a certain way and it'd be like, don't do that, do this instead. So I never like developed the skills to like actually like say what the problem was. So I think if I would have had that, I might have been able to approach it at the time. I mean, I definitely feel like a much more enlightened person now. But I would have, I think I would have been able to approach it a little bit better from the lens of, what does she need, rather than what do I need, which they're both equally important. But with what you're saying about kind of like, back in the closet, because it wasn't exactly the way that you had envisioned it. um I mean, it was similar. I mean, it took from that time until when I actually realized I was, when I came out as trans. It was 15 years. Yeah, it was 15 years. Well, I guess 12 years technically. Because like, I don't know, we didn't communicate right. It didn't, um, I don't know. I could have done better. And I mean, she did amazing. It was just my own ability to be able to adequately describe what I like, what I was, and then also be able to understand that like I need to be me. And then I really hope that my wife can accept me as me, rather than, um, I if she can accept me this way, then I have to hide who I am. Which is it's just, I know it works sometimes. Um, but if I wouldn't have been able to come out, I wouldn't have lasted more than a few years, honestly.
Mhm.
Because like that was my trajectory.
I ended up there too. Yeah. So there we keep splintering. There's still so many things to talk about in
Sorry.
this because it's really important. Um, so I love hearing that you, after you came out to her initially in one of her dresses, which is a little more drastic than I was at. And it still took you about 12 years to come out and understand that you were trans. What
Mhm.
happened in those 12 years with the cross-dressing? Were you able to kind of start exploring that? Did you find a good balance there, or was that mostly a closeted period?
I mean, it was fully closeted. What I would do basically is I would come home and strip out of men's clothing and put on my clothes as soon as I got home. Which you can imagine in that for like a decade, it was wearing men's clothing caused me like anxiety. Like I didn't like it. I tried different styles. I tried different types of like fits and it just never I felt like I wanted it off my body. Like I almost would rather be naked than wear those clothing or those clothes. Um and then you can imagine that like it was like stressful to like live in a neighborhood where I couldn't walk by an open window. I had to like make sure that I had shorts and a t-shirt like available so that like if a UPS came or somebody randomly came to my house I could yes run and rip off my clothes. So I mean it was in existence, but it wasn't a good one. And then what started making it worse was I had my first kid. And you basically like you default to what you were given, right? And the example I was giving was you have to be macho, otherwise you're weak and worthless. So basically, anything feminine was worthless and not good. So I struggled with my kid. I mean, when my kid was like a little bundle of neurons and just ate and screamed and shat everywhere, like all babies do. I would just dress around them, and then when they started realizing who I was, I stopped like for a few years, I stopped like allowing myself to dress like in front of them. Um, and then that was tough. And it also breeded honestly a bit of resentment towards them because it was like, shit, you're in this house. Now I can't be myself. So and then I had a second kid and a third kid. That model wasn't sustainable. By the time I had my first kid, I couldn't do it anymore. Which basically is that when I came out to my kids, they're like, yeah, what? Like you are already this way at home. Like, can I go play with my Legos? Because basically, like they at home, they'd see me in dresses, they'd see me in women's clothing because I would still strip out of my clothes like when I got home and put on women's clothing um, in front of my kids. And we had a lot of discussions about it. Like, hey, like we're in Kentucky. Most of your friends aren't going to really understand. And, we always preface it with, um, we don't tell other people what to do with themselves, but some other people have a really hard time with that. So this is not something that I'm ashamed of, but it's just a little easier if your friends at school don't know this part of me. And I don't think that they like let it slip ever, honestly, because I never heard about it. My wife never heard about it. So yeah. Not the cross-dressing. I hadn't really verbalized, and mostly 'cause, I mean, it's just, like, amazing what, filler, Botox, plastic surgery, and hormones will do to you after a year. But I essentially, like, I could not see it happening, because of how masculine my body was and how masculine my face was. And even, like, things like my voice, like, my, kind of, old voice is quite deep and quite masculine, and I still think that mine's, on the lower end of feminine. But even that took about a year of voice training to be able to consistently keep my voice up here. So at the time I was like, there's no way, like I feel I'm trans, but there's like no way that I can transition outwardly. Like there's a zero chance. And yeah, took therapy to help me with that. Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Mhm. It was, I mean, it was a logical next step, and, the time and it was actually before I had actually told her, again, because I was terrified. But I had, since college, I've, lasered my body. I started off, I was really into road biking because it was, socially acceptable to shave my legs with road biking. It was honestly, like, one of the reasons I got into road biking is because 'cause I'm like, "This is" because I lived in California, and so I don't you can't wear pants all the time, and so I liked having my legs shaved, but I needed to, like, have a reason for it. Anyways, I started lasering in college, slowly made my way up, and then, when I was in residency, so 2015-ish, a little before that, shaved my, or I lasered my beard to my neckline. Um, and genetically, I'm a very hairy person. I basically had like a goatee or beard at the age of 18, and I basically had that look up until like 2020. Um, so when I told my wife that I wanted to laser my face, that's when she realized it, and then I didn't actually come out to her until maybe a year later, like 6 months to 12 months later is when I told her, and then she told me later, he's like, "That's when I knew when you wanted to laser your face, like, that's when I knew you were trans." So
Mm.
she figured it out before I told her, basically.
So from time to time, because I'm doing stuff here, I will mute my microphone to make sure that I don't um, mess up your audio. And when that happens, occasionally I will forget to unmute. So
Oh,
when I
you're
asked that question, I was on mute. So if you'll allow me, I will just ask it again. I don't need you
of
to
course,
answer. Your audio is great, but
of course, please.
can I remember what it was?
I think it was like it was like how was the actual coming out process? It was
Yeah,
something along
I
the
think I've
lines.
got it.
Yeah.
So when you came out as trans, was that sort of a logical progression, or what were you starting at zero, kind of having that whole conversation over again? I think that's
Yeah,
a
it
close
was
enough.
I mean, it was a logical, like, step, but it was something that I wasn't, I guess I wasn't ready to tell her, or I wasn't in the mental space where like, felt safe telling her, and this is
Mm.
nothing on her. She had been nothing but supportive the entire time. It was just all this, we talked about the intersectionality, about all of the things that all the baggage basically that I had that, were trying to tell me that I couldn't do it. Um, so I had basically since, college-ish, really wanted to shave my legs. And I realized that road bikers shave their legs. So that's one of the reasons I got into road biking. I was like pretty heavy into road biking in college and most of med school and most of residency. And so because of, like, I always say like, oh, is razor burn? I started, lasering, I get the Groupon for the laser of the legs. And I slowly made my way up. And then I think it was in residency. I'd already lasered my chest and had gone up to the, basically the neck crease of the beard. And that was all like fine. And I'm actually like genetically a very hairy individual. So I've probably had on my body, like, I don't know, 150, 200 laser sessions on my body. Like, I'm talking like fingers, toes, my butthole, like everything is lasered. And it's been a painful process, but we're almost there. There's like a little bit left that I'm trying to get rid of, but where it's kind of nice because where we're at now, is I just have white hairs because, like, lasering doesn't get the white hairs. So once I get rid of all the dark hairs and electrolysis, and then hopefully I'll be done. But,
I
when I
see.
was, probably 2020, 2021, around there, I told, my wife that I wanted to laser off my beard, which that was like a staple. That was like something I'd had essentially either a goatee or a beard, like a full goatee or a beard, for since I was 18. So that's when my wife realized that, like, she realized it before I told her. Like, it was probably like 6 months to a year, um, before I told her I was trans, that she later told me she realized I was trans.
Mhm. One of the things that really affects coming out to a significant other and bringing them along for the process is how they're now perceived.
Mm.
They've been in a straight relationship. Your wife wasn't exposed to a lot of LGBT experience. And now, essentially, she's going to become part of the LGBT community and going to be labeled, if not by herself and in your relationship, the way you identify it, at least by the outside world as a lesbian. What did that do for the dynamic in having these conversations and moving through your transition?
Yeah, it was, even before, like, we would always go to pride events. We were very, we were allies. We would actually, like, support as much as we could. So the being at least, peripherally, like, around the queer community, we as adults, we'd always been that. Um, and it was something that I was like, honestly, stressed me out more than, and again, it's not her fault. It stressed me out more than it should have, because I really felt like the only, like, kind of, and it's labels, right? Like, why do we even have labels? But it is, to me, it's important that people know that I'm a lesbian. Like, that's actually important to me. And I was a little, like, nervous that she would just not feel that way. And from the start, she was just like, "Okay, well, I'm a lesbian." Like, it really wasn't that big of a jump for her. And she works in aesthetics. So part of her job, it's kind of like being a hairdresser, a nail tech. Like, part of the job is having conversations while you're doing procedures on patients. She's a PA, she's a physician assistant. When she talks to patients, she's my wife, very open about it, and very fortunate about it. I mean, it took it was just because it was so ingrained, and I had been so masculine before. It took a little bit of, like, I want to say, like, well, honestly, not even that much, really. I was like maybe 3 to 5 months, for her to not accidentally misgender me. Like, she always corrected it right away. Where she had the most trouble was when she was talking about me before. And then we kind of realized that even me before was a woman. And it makes it a lot easier to just, I'm a woman. So even discussing me before, both of us use female pronouns to discuss me before, even though I wasn't out at the time.
Mhm. Quick tangent on that point. Something that I
Mhm.
found kind of fascinating recently. Um, yeah, I got used to referring to myself in the feminine for past memories, and
Mhm.
now I'm sort of surprised when I remember that I wasn't. That, like, when I see a photo or some part of a memory comes back and it's just
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I wasn't presenting feminine then. Have you gotten to that point where you sort of forget that you weren't always a girl?
Yes. Outwardly a girl. Like, I had a masculine appearance before. I wasn't able to show insides on the outsides. Like, I'll see pictures of myself, and I don't know, like, I'm kind of honestly, like, a little conflicted about it, because I I mean, ultimately, like, I'm a scientist, really. Like, that's how I'm trained to think. And that's who I was before, right? There's nothing I can do to erase that completely. I don't like seeing pictures of myself before, really. And when I see those, it's just like, oh, it's just like, oh my God, who was that? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. That was how I presented before. So yeah, to answer your question, like, yeah, I feel that way now that I'm, like, so happy, and I'm able to, like, do essentially live is exactly the way that I want to, and have, like, the life that I want through, work and a lot of talking and a lot of self work and conversations and a lot of studying and taking tests. I'm here, the miserable shell of a thing I was before. When I see that person, I'm just like, I just kind of like feel bad. I feel sorry. Um, I don't know if you know, but in the it's a very niche field, right? So an emergency medicine physician. I am in academics, and then within academics, I my focus is bedside ultrasound. And before that, I had actually like been I think I had like 8 or 9 citations in PubMed. I lectured on an almost monthly basis, nationally and internationally. I lectured at our regional conference my first year out of residency, like not our regional, our national conference, like the American College of Emergency Physicians. There's a yearly scientific assembly. I actually won Rookie of the Year for being the best rookie speaker that year. So I had a presence already, like people knew who I was. And so it's impossible for me not to see me before. Actually, I have a medical education company, and I struggle sometimes because when I share those videos, a lot of them, because I've been doing it for so long, are from me before. And I sometimes struggle like sharing those videos because like I'm like, that's not me. I actually joke now that it's my twin brother that I murdered. And that always gets a laugh.
Yeah, it's so interesting because yeah, there's those moments where you feel like you have to out yourself, and
Yeah.
that I can understand how that would be very, very difficult. I've just been really happy to get to the point of, like we were saying, being surprised at seeing those old photos and getting to the point of sort of dissociating from them, of like, oh,
Mhm.
there's this other person that I used to know, that was
Right.
part of my life, but it's gotten pretty far removed, and it's really kind of interesting for it to change, because early on, there was a lot of shame with that. There was a lot of I don't know, there were a lot of negative feelings about having those photos, and now to
Yeah.
have them to have them feel sort of like an out of body experience, kind of a different person, a different life, is interesting, and is much easier to talk about and to be around, to look through those photos. I don't have the shame anymore of, the before and after, and it's really kind of a nice place to get to.
Yeah, the way that I kind of like it's compartmentalized in my brain, is I imagine it's like, I mean, it's not the same, but to somebody who might not like have had the experience yet, it's kind of like having a picture of like a bad haircut that you kept for a while that you thought was cool, and you're like, I don't like that I had that haircut. I accept that I had that haircut, but it's not a haircut that I'm like, like I'm not gonna uh, put this picture of me with a shitty haircut, like, and send it and put it on my Facebook as like my cover page or whatever. I know that that was a haircut I have. I don't like it, but I accept that that was a haircut I have. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
Mhm. So how has your wife adapted to the whole lesbian lifestyle? Is it something that she was able to take to fairly quickly? Did that take a lot of time?
I talked to her about it a bunch because we try to. It's so much easier to have these open communications because then we can figure out. I mean, I'm more than half the time I'm having a problem with my perception, to be honest. But um, I she didn't really have an issue with it, and I think it was because we were pretty comfortable in the queer community because 'cause we'd been around it. We'd actually, like, actively seek it out, and I don't know how much of it was, like, primarily, like, her seeking it out for her, or how much of it was, like, me kind of, like, being like, "Hey, let's go do this gay thing." Um, and, like, being, raised a woman, affection, dancing with each other, like kissing each other, like it's not something that's all that abnormal. Mostly because I feel like people who are raised as women, like that is it's almost like that's femininity, is like being okay with showing affection. Um, and we're very I don't know, I think we've integrated quite well. We found a little community down here that we're becoming really good friends with. And so all that to say, like, it's great. Like we have pride paraphernalia in our cars, like like how like you I can identify like what people do by what stickers are on their water bottles. Like hers is like plastered with like lesbian stickers that she bought. So all I have to say, like she's adapted very well.
One of the theories that I've been kind of harboring, developing, spreading here and there is, we hear so much about people that just out and out reject their spouse when they come out as trans.
Yeah.
And this theory that I sort of have is you need to, as someone that's rejected a trans partner, need to examine yourself really deeply, because the truth is that you were attracted to somebody of a gender that
Mhm.
had the opposite gender energy at their core. Because
Right.
as much as we try and hide it, and we try and be super butch or whatever, like you used with your hockey friends,
Yeah.
there are signs, because we can't hide everything of who we actually are as people at our core.
Right.
And so I just feel like if someone says, "Oh, I couldn't possibly be a lesbian, I couldn't possibly be gay,"
Yeah.
it's like you could very possibly, because you need to explore like what it was that attracted you initially to
Mhm.
this type of person. And so that I'll just, float that out there. Um, Another aspect of it, and then I swear we will finally move on. Um,
No, we're talking about myself. I'm okay with it. I can do this all day.
yeah. Um, Another aspect of it for a partner that can struggle is, if they can accept themselves in this kind of new
Mhm.
dynamic, this new definition, sometimes their family struggles with it and can reject them based on what their partner is going through. Did your wife experience any of that?
No, that she is not really that close to her family outside of her mom and her dad. Um, and we do have scattered. We have an Adventist, like she has an Adventist side and a non-Adventist side. Her dad's side's not Adventist, and her mom's side's all Adventist. And we kind of have grown apart. And so it's not really like an issue. Um, Interestingly enough, the first adult besides my wife that knew about it was my wife's mom, my mother-in-law. She actually started living with us, and I was like shit, like I can't hide my clothing from her, because she moved in to basically help us with the kids and to like kind of help us around the house. And so we did it better with her. We sat her down, both of us, and we're like, hey, this is what this is what Jailyn is. What questions do you have? She asked the standard questions that people don't know ask. We answered them. She's like, okay. So it was like weirdly like one of the easiest experiences. Like my mother-in-law is known for at least 10 years about me. Um, her brother's been really supportive. He's a mechanical engineer with 3 kids of his own up north. He's been very supportive, and she doesn't really talk with the rest of her family, so it doesn't really like matter as much. And it's one of those things that I don't know if I'm just speaking from my experience, but um, the scariest thing I've done in my life was to come out. And so once that happened, everything was like easier. And I think for her as well, because I mean, she was nervous about it too. Um, but I used to be really kind of like nervous about my body and insecure about my body. And now my body is significantly more feminine now, but it's not like a 18-year-old's body. You know what I mean? Like I have like a little, little pooch. I'm not as fit and as in shape as I want, but I don't care. Like I wear crop tops and stuff, and I'm 40. Um, and The other thing along with that is that after my experience coming out to my mom, which wasn't great, um, the good thing I took out of that is that I was like, wait a minute, and this is, I don't know if, have you heard of the author Glennon Doyle? She has an amazing book called Untamed. It was one of the books that actually helped me come out. So I'd highly recommend it to like anybody, especially if they're questioning. And even if they're not, um, she has a whole chapter that's called it's like the island. And the whole idea of it is, this is where me and my immediate family live. We live on this island. We have a drawbridge, and it was a whole chapter about it. She's a phenomenal communicator. Um, this is what we do on our island. You can be fearful, because that's ultimately when people have a hard time with being trans. It's all fear. You can be fearful on over there. I'm gonna roll up that drawbridge. He literally uses drawbridge analogy. If you want to be on my island with me and my family, I will lower the drawbridge. But the minute that you're not, you're gonna be fearful and like negative energy, like you can do that somewhere else. And so after my experience with my mom, it kind of gave me that, it really solidified that. And so if someone has a problem, and it's not like I'm gonna like give you a hard time. It's no, I'm like, all right, you have a problem, like fine, like yeah, get out of here. Like, I don't want to deal with you. And my wife I believe that my wife feels that way as well. So to answer your question, long way to answer your question, that she really hasn't had a whole lot of issues per se with it. But it was after we had extensive discussions and realized that uh, people that would have a hard time with our, non-conventional family, we don't need them in our life.
That's really good that you can get to that kind of place of being okay in yourself and in on your island,
Mhm.
that you don't need those other people that aren't willing to meet you there and act accordingly.
Exactly.
What were some of the biggest struggles that you've had as you've explored your gender, as you've gone through this journey? And do you feel like they were the majority of them, the ones that held you back the most, were internal or external?
All like 95% internal. My big problem is patience. I'm very goal oriented. Like I've always had a hard time with the journey as part of the process. Um, Basically, once I decided to that I needed to transition to survive. Um, One of the biggest things has been being patient with giving the estrogen some time to do its magic. Understanding that laser takes time. Understanding that it takes time, energy, resources for surgery. Realizing that I can't just flip a switch and just be exactly the way I want to be. That honestly has been the most kind of like challenging, is just understanding that this is actually part of the process.
It's all about patience. I keep hammering in that. It's all about patience.
Yeah,
Uh,
but it's hard. It's hard
it
to be
is.
patient.
It
I want it
is also the
now.
hardest thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you've moved along in your journey, have your goals shifted? Like when I'm really fascinated when people, I love spreading the word that it's an exploration, it's a journey that you're on. It's
Mhm.
less of a transition, because transition sort of like tends to make people think point A, point B, you go from here to here. That's what a transition is. And it's more of an exploration of finding what gender is for you, what your how you want to present, and what's comfortable for you to be and to present. And so I'm fascinated, and I'd love to open it up to people to show that you don't have to go all the way, and you can actually change. You can change your mind. You can pull back, all of those sorts of things as you're exploring this. So in that, have your goals shifted as you've moved through, of things that like were a priority before, or maybe something you were afraid of and you thought you never could do, and now they're on the list?
Yeah, my biggest nightmare, like literally my biggest nightmare, like it was something I had to work through with my therapist, was my professional colleagues, like my people I knew nationally, internationally, would find out about me. And so like to lecture, I think the first time I lectured as me was around a year ago. And once I kind of got past that, I was like, oh, all of my like friends like actually like me, for me, and are supportive, and are not horrible. That was like, I think, like the big thing. And I mean, I'm a scientist. I test things out. I hypothesize, I test things out and figure out what works. Um, I don't know if this is every trans girl's experience or trans dude's experience. But I went through I call it, I see pictures of it now, and I'm kind to my past self, but I call it my awkward non-binary phase. Where I was just like, let me test out wearing mascara at work. Let me test out wearing women's scrubs at work. And then so kind of tested the waters. And it was, I don't know, such a relief when I could test the waters and it was actually okay. And then um, again, I'm very and like goal oriented. And so understanding like what is the thing that I need to pass. Um, and it took a lot of kind of like work or whatever. The thing before was how do I pass? And then it's a combination now. I think my misgendering rate in public is like maybe 1% now. It's so low. And I'm sure it's a combo of being on estrogen, a year, having had one round of face surgeries. Um, Usually kind of like what you mentioned, like if I'm talking on the phone or if I'm like checking out at a store, my voice tends to be a little higher. So I think some of that might be a little subconscious. My voice right now is a little bit lower because I'm comfortable with you, and it's also the end of the day, and I've been awake since 4. I had work this morning. Um, but the goal now, like it's basically transitioned from being obsessed with passing to learning how to enjoy femininity, to like enjoy that my skin is soft, to enjoy that I smell nice. Even if I have no deodorant on, I have no perfume on, I still smell nice. To enjoy that I don't have hair anywhere, to enjoy that I can wear like this little, like 50s moment dress that's actually like satiny. I can wear this out. Like I could right now go to a store with this on and I'll get complimented. Like I'll have other women say like that dress is really pretty and I'll say thank you and then we'll chat and we'll have a conversation like I've always wanted. So it's a lot more focused on the femininity rather on focus on passing, I guess, is kind of like my personal mild shift because they're
Mhm.
related.
Is there anything you feel like you've been able to accomplish in your life because of the fact that you're trans?
Well, I mean, I guess the biggest thing, it's kind of selfish, but it's to understand what happiness and emotions are. Before I transitioned, the 3 essentially in my adult life, I only cried 3 times, and it was like I shed a silent single tear every time each of my 3 kids was born. And besides that, I never cried. I literally could not cry. Um, and so to be able to feel like this like broad range of emotions that I never even knew existed, to be able to feel like this intense joy and honestly, even the intense sadness, that is something that I'm actually grateful for because I couldn't feel that before. Um, I feel like I've been missing out on that for a while, honestly. And then like the best analogy I can think of for myself is um, it's like seeing the whole world, experiencing life, only seeing black and white, and then discovering color, and then being able to discover every color. That's kind of like how I feel about life. It was a life before, but it's so much more like glorious and beautiful and fulfilling now. Somebody mentioned, I actually saw it on TikTok. It was somebody talking about coming out later in life as a lesbian. And what she said was, it was like only drinking black coffee and then discovering that you can put creamer and sugar in coffee. So it's kind of like a similar vibe.
This can be sort of similar. What is your favorite thing that you've learned through your transition, either about yourself or the world around you?
Um, the thing that I didn't know is that I have a capacity to love more than emotional about it right now. I have the capacity to love more than I ever like knew that I could have. The bond between like me and my wife and me and my kids, I've never felt this way before. And I think it's because I just didn't allow myself to have the emotions before, but that is the thing that is the most important. It's this overwhelming joy that I can feel and that I feel on a daily basis. That has honestly been the best part. I mean, I love the hair. I love the process of putting makeup on every single day. I love fussing. I love spending 3 hours in the nail salon. I love having to like worry about like, are these is this dress gonna like are my boobs gonna look okay in this dress? Like all those things that I've always wanted to fuss over, I get to fuss over now. But the by far the most important thing is feeling love basically and happiness, which I never really felt before.
What are some of the key pieces of advice that you have to pass on to young or closeted trans folks out there?
I try to think about like myself, what would I tell myself? Because I struggle sometimes because I try so hard to not push kind of like what I need, what worked for me to somebody else. But I imagine that my situation is probably quite similar to a few people's at least. And the big thing is that it's okay to do a scary thing. You think about it, and if this scary thing is something that you wanna do, you can do it. I mean, it's something that I wish I had done earlier. I'm happy that I discovered it when I did, but if I would have figured this out earlier, like, life would have been just vastly, vastly different. Surround yourself with people that care for you and nurture you and don't try to push what they think onto you. Don't get offended if you happen to think differently than them. That was one of the big unlocks for me is to realize, and this, I hopefully this isn't too controversial, but I'm so thankful to be alive. I love my life. I love the joy that I feel. But I didn't sign a contract to my conservative, closed-minded parents. I didn't sign anything that said I had to do what they said for my whole life. Once I freed myself from that to understand that, like, if somebody isn't good for your life, it is okay to let them go. That is something that also that I wish that I had learned earlier. And this is not to say I don't wish anybody harm, by the way. I don't wish anybody sadness. But I don't need to put other people's sadness onto me. That's their problem. And then my problem are my problems, and I choose to be happy. And I wish everybody else felt that way because I feel bless you. I feel like a lot of I think issues in general would be so much like not non-issues if people just realize that we can disagree and it doesn't mean that you're wrong and I'm right and it doesn't mean anything other than I do what's good for me and my family and then you do what's okay for you and your family, but also don't pass laws pushing your beliefs onto me also because I don't do that for you. I wouldn't.
Well, yeah, and it's gotten so far out of hand that like if I don't agree with you with what you're especially with what you're doing, then
Yeah.
you're evil. It's
Right. I
like,
know. It's like
oh,
it's
okay.
insane.
Like, wow,
Yeah.
that's being a little dramatic here.
Yeah.
Come on.
It is quite dramatic. It's excessive for sure.
Well, Jailyn, it's been wonderful having you on. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And it's such a pleasure to be able to see you virtually. And I hope that soon we'll see each other in person.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. Hopefully that'll be soon. All right, y'all, that is our cut of the episode. As I mentioned for the folks on YouTube, this show is also available as a podcast and will be on YouTube in perpetuity as not a live as one of the regular edits, but it's that first section that we put up there for everybody. When we come back, we're going to take a break. When we come back, that is sort of the bonus section, and we'll talk about Jailyn's life outside of being outside of the gender journey. We'll probably get to some more of that, and we'll answer all of your questions. So if you have any questions about Jailyn or myself, please put them in the chat now. And as I said, once we get back from our break, we will answer all of them. So hold tight. We'll be gone for about somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. I've got a little video that plays, and we'll be back. What advice do you have to pass on to young or closeted trans people out there?
And this is probably cliche to death, but I have to say that You have to do what's right for you at a time that's right for you. No one else can make that decision for you. And no one else can push you into something that you're not ready for. You can't live your life to make everyone else happy all the time. Because if you try and do that, you're going to fail. You're never going to make everyone happy.
I think getting a support network and at least telling a few close friends is huge. It's so huge, because those feelings of being alone and not being seen be really devastating. Having the support of a couple of really close friends or family members or whoever you trust is just absolutely huge.
Just find anybody to talk to that you can about this. If you feel like you're trans or you might be trans, or just find somebody you can confide in.
Having a group of friends, no matter how small, or somebody that can back you up and lift you up during it will mean the world. Because at first, everybody is scared. The more you go out, the more you build your confidence in yourself, the less it'll affect you. Everybody feels it and will continue to feel it. And it's just whether or not you let it overtake you and control you, or you let it go past.
Almost every relationship has grown deeper as a result of sharing this deeper part of myself. So I think there's something to finding your community to get to expand with and reinforce, but I think it then amplifies into almost every other relationship you can have.
I think that there's a struggle to transition the right way. Everyone's going to transition on a different timeline, in different order of operations, and as long as it happens how they want it to happen, that's a valid transition. And not transition is valid.
I do struggle with this. I should follow my own advice. Don't focus on like regretting things, like not ever, like not starting early enough or anything like that, because then you'll just go through a loop and just constantly think about it, and it's not something you can change.
I didn't take anything for granted. Every positive change, even most of the time, I swear it was just a placebo where I noticed some growth in places that I wanted growth, or I would notice like really subtle things. I swear every single day for that first year. And those are I looked at the victories more than I looked at anything else. And I think that's super important during the first year.
So much of transitioning is was just waiting on something. You know, waiting for things to happen in your body, waiting for things to happen in your brain, waiting for surgeries, waiting for name changes. Be patient, because what's waiting for you at the end is so worth everything that you felt, all the hurt that you felt, all the anguish that you felt, all the anxiety. It just makes everything so much better. I can't describe the feeling of waking up and getting to be me, this person that I've wanted to be my entire life, this person that I've known I was my entire life. It just makes everything so worth it.
I would go back and say, look, you're going to go through a lot of crap and it's going to be hard, but it's going to make you a better person to go through it, and you'll be fine. Just know you'll be fine. Like, that's the main point they want to make.
You have to be you. You can't hide who you are. You have to be you. And I know that it's going to be scary and you're going to get bullied a lot. So be you, but do it in a safe way. Like, don't ever put yourself in danger. But also, don't cower down because it's going to be hard. Because life is hard.
It is scary, but hopefully it's worth it. And most of the time it is worth it to truly be you, whatever form that looks like. You know, I've always been happy, but I didn't know, and I didn't know peace and joy the way that I know it now. And it was a bit of a struggle at first, but I would do it a million times over. And one of the things that I say often in my lives is do it scared. Yeah, it's scary. then do it scared.
Whatever you choose to do, whether it's come out or not come out, transition or not transition, start hormones, have surgery, any and all of it is whatever you do it for you. Do it for you and you alone. Don't do it for anybody else. Don't do it because your friends are doing it, or don't not do it because your parents said no, or whatever you do it for you. Because in the end, the person you're most accountable to in this life is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you're comfortable with, like even if you're trans and you know it, but you're legitimately fine with not doing anything about it, do that for you, and that's okay. There's no wrong way to be trans. Just be you. The only person you're ever answerable to at the end of the life is yourself.
Your journey is your own. No one can tell you how to transition. No one can tell you what it's supposed to look like, because we're all different.
I had moments coming out that I did it on other people's timeline because they asked me to, and were I to do it again, I wouldn't do that. It's something that's very personal. Either you might not want to come out, or you might want to come out, and people are stopping you. And I think it's a very personal thing, and so making sure that's on your timeline is important.
You need to always ask questions about who are you, and is that really you, or is that something that has been manufactured for you and you have just latched your identity to that?
Love yourself.
Hi, folks. All right. So I have my glass of bubbly here. I hope I'm not. Yeah. Cheers. Let's bring Jailyn back now that she's cheering us. Let's try that again. Here. Cheers.
Hi. Cheers.
Clink, clink. Ooh, nice. We both went white. I love it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm going to try not to be too rude. I've got some Trader Joe's mesquite seasoned almonds, smoked seasoned almonds.
That looks delicious.
Which,
I'm hungry.
I was sort of like, I could use a snack, and I'm like, I'm going to grab the crunchiest, most horrendous thing to put on a mic. So we're probably going to run into more muting issues because I'm going to mute while I'm crunching while you're answering, and then I'm going to forget to unmute it. But it's fine.
No
This is the loose half of the show. We're already drinking wine. It's going to be silly
Yeah.
and everything. So, I didn't see any questions come in yet. So everybody, get your questions coming in. We can talk about anything. Oh, actually, I did not ask you, Jailyn. Are you open? A pretty open book for answering questions?
Yeah. The only thing that I don't want to give is specifics about my children, just because I try to be really protective of them. But besides that, yeah, I actually fairly open, like more open than I think maybe I should be. But yes, if I'm not comfortable answering a question, I'll just say like, I'd rather not answer that, but it wouldn't offend me to be asked a question.
Okay, good. Yeah, and we didn't actually cover that in the pre-interview, but yeah, that's sort of the thing. Like I it's all about you being comfortable.
Thanks.
Was there anything else in your initial answering that I wanted to follow up on? There were more comments I think I wanted to make, but I'm struggling to remember them right now. Let's talk a little bit about the hockey, because I was really kind of interested about that. We didn't get to dive into it too much in the main part of the show, and I wanted to kind of know, like, looking back at that, you said that you kind of didn't understand the sports atmosphere and didn't do a lot of that when you were growing up. Was joining the hockey team like one of those things that so many of us do, of like a last grasp at trying to be masculine and present masculine and prove to the world that you were a dude?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, of course. Now I do want to preface it with, I never liked watching sports, but because I think like my dad probably identified like this early on, there was such an emphasis on making me a man, that I actually have played every sport. Like I can play basketball. I'm pretty good at basketball. I'm pretty good at baseball. I'm pretty good at football. I just had never picked up ice skating because we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And that's like the most expensive sport to pick up. Like it is so expensive. And both my parents worked. So they couldn't like drive me to like, because you actually go to meets. Like I actually like, so I'm a physician, my wife's a PA. I don't really want my kids to play hockey because I don't want the lifestyle of like having to drive everywhere. All that to say, like I played a lot of sports growing up, which is why I think I was able to play hockey. But yeah, I mean, I was doing it to do something with a group of guys to try and figure out how to be a guy, for sure. And I tried, I connected kind of with a couple of people, but it was fun, and I'm actually like very great. I'm very grateful for them. They're all like, nice, at least the ones that I connected with, a bit. Yeah, it was fun. I actually have considered getting back into it. Because it was honestly like the reason why is because it was such a good workout. Like that is the main reason why I really enjoyed it. Like it was mentally and physically like so stimulating. It never stopped. You had to think all the time. It was actually a good sport. The problem is that it is probably one of the, like, besides football, like tackle football, I feel like it's got to be one of the most masculine centered sports that exist. I don't know if I'm like want to be in that space. I considered when I was in my non-binary phase, I actually considered derby, because I forget what it actually stands for, but the United States Derby, like roller derby association, specifically says that they welcome trans people. Like it's in their motto that all women, regardless of like chromosomes or something like that, are welcome to play in the women's league. So that's one of the reasons that I kind of like looked into it. But in the end, I decided that I'd paid way too much money on my face to be okay with maybe getting my nose broken.
That's great. And see, the thing is I've been invited before, well before I was comfortable with the fact that I was trans and all of that sort of stuff. And recently I've been kind of like, it's been sort of bouncing around in the back of my mind, and I am not happy with my nose. So a break that required a really good break, some people would say bad break, but could benefit me. So
might be an excuse.
Yeah.
Well, if you happen to have size 12 feet, you can have my roller skates that I already bought, by the way, that I don't use.
Oh, hot damn. So I am usually about a 10.5. I think I'd be like a 10.5, maybe 11. But if I could get wide, maybe it would be closer to the 10.5 or 10. But I'm curious to try them. If nothing else, I have friends.
Yeah.
So I roller skate, it seems like once every decade. I had a friend about 10 years ago that had a birthday party, and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't skated in forever. She had the birthday party at our local skating rink, and I went and struggled a little bit, but I had the best time.
Oh yeah, it's fun. It's
and
so
then
fun.
When I'm not skating, I just forget about it. Like, who cares? Whatever. This last year, a friend had a skating birthday party, and I went, and I was just like, I felt like I was flying, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Why do I not do this more often? So I made it a point. I finally bought skates. I bought some really probably crappy ones, but
So are you talking about quads or inlines?
Quads.
Quads. Wow. Yeah, because that's one that I still need to kind of learn. It's crazy because I'm not used to keeping my feet flat on the ground. Because with hockey, you need that angle. That's how you stop. That's how you turn quickly. And so it's very weird to have my feet flat. So I struggle with turning.
Okay.
But I have them. I'm going to learn one day. Maybe when I come up, I'll bring my roller skates.
That would be wonderful. That would be so wonderful. Oh. Hi, Dave. I saw you had a comment there and it disappeared. I hope you're retyping it. Thank you for your support, by the way. I love seeing your comments on the YouTube videos here and there. Yes, please come up. I would love to roller skate. You're also like firing up dreams of a trans softball team.
Oh my gosh, I want that so bad.
so bad, right? Like the commute to San Diego might be worth it because I want it so bad.
You know, there's actually a league down here, and it's my wife. We already like made a deal. We're gonna get our kids settled into sports first, and then figure out because we're like trying to figure out the job situation down here because like we commute an hour to work. We work in different areas, but so we're trying to find like jobs closer down here. We're figuring that out. But there's a queer women's league that also like says like trans women are 100% like we want trans women. So hopefully within the next year or so, like Shanna and me will be on the same team, which we've never done together before. Like she played softball in college, like in club sports, you know. Like she wasn't on like a traveling team or anything, but so she plays, and so we'll play together. It'll be fun.
Oh, what a dream. That is amazing.
I'm so excited.
I love that so much for you. That is really living the dream. My God. I just can't even imagine that. But yeah, we need to get you up here. We need to go skating, and we actually just did that. I'm trying to do the local thing now. I started the Transverse. The Transverse was global, and then now I'm like, okay, local, what does that look like? What do we need to do? And so I started a trans peer group, and then I also started a group that I call Out and About. It's our LGBT adventure group, and we did a skating night like last Sunday, and it was so much fun. It's just so much fun.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's it's almost like especially with like, you know, all the stupid shit that's going on right now. Like I almost feel like it's not like a need. It's not like I feel, well, it is a need. I don't feel undue pressure to be more visible, but I am trying to be more visible because I think that when more people realize that, like, I don't fucking care about your kids. Like, I really don't. I don't care if your kids are gay or queer. I don't care, actually. I don't like them, probably. I also like don't care like what bathroom you go to. I just want to piss. That's all I want. Sorry, I'm using like bad words because I figured that this is like the after show.
Yeah, let it loose. We got the wine. Let go.
Yeah, I feel like people, like, if they just like knew that, oh, by the way, like it, you know, we used to think that people with schizophrenia were possessed by demons, and now we know it's like schizophrenia. We also know that some people have red hair, and that doesn't like mean there's something wrong with them. It's just a population of the US has red hair. Some people have blue eyes, some people had brown eyes. The big thing that I like to, like, when people are like, oh, but social contagion, I'm like, hey, like, do you know anybody who's left-handed? You know, that whole like thing where like the amount of left-handed people exploded, you know, in the, what is it, 30s or something like that, when like churches stopped saying it was like literally a sin to write with your left hand. And
yeah, it was like practically decriminalized. Like you know,
exactly.
If you were left-handed, your teachers were taught to force you to write with your right hand. And so the quote population of left-handed people was like at this low level. And then when they got rid of that crap, all of a sudden it spiked, and then it leveled out. And we've found the exact same curve among trans people recently, where we've gotten we've had a lot of people come out publicly. Caitlyn Jenner, Laverne Cox.
We have to say her name though.
The reason I'm still
that sounds like a charged statement.
The reason I'm still comfortable saying her name, as problematic as she is, well, there's two reasons. It's a good example of the fact that I will never say that anybody in any group is anything. I'm you know, a little bit of a tangent. I'm not a fan of all cops are bastards, because I don't believe that. I don't believe when you apply a label of all to anybody that it's accurate.
Yeah.
Caitlin's a perfect example of not all trans people are good people, or are good people for the trans community. They're not helping. And the thing is you don't have to help. Like, it's an individual
right.
thing. Like
She can do whatever she wants.
we prefer the people that don't hurt things. She does a little bit of damage. Neither
I
here nor
know.
there. The other
Yeah.
reason that she's one that I bring up, I saw Orange is the New Black and watched Laverne Cox.
Yeah.
And I was sort of, I appreciated the fact that she was out and that was really cool. It still didn't get into my freaking tiny little brain. It wasn't until Caitlyn Jenner came out and did that whole thing that I'm like, oh, coming out as a trans person is possible. For some reason, it was her journey that illuminated for me that it was a possibility for me. And maybe it was sort of that, like, you know, I've always been a super sporty, you know, sporty spice and tried, we try so hard to present and to fit into the gender we're supposed to be, that when it comes time to come out and accept ourselves and understand what's really going on in ourselves our whole lives, it's a huge struggle. It's a huge fight to break that programming.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason, it was Caitlyn's story, a super mask man, something very, very public, very, you know, very sporty, and the top of masculinity. Coming out as trans. It's like, okay, sort of that anybody can come out kind of a thing. And that's
reasonable.
That's why she still warrants a little bit of mention in the conversation for me personally.
That's fair. That's fair. A bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment, just because, like, I don't know, she says like crazy stuff.
She says actively anti-trans stuff. That's the thing. Crazy,
Yeah.
whatever. Like she says actively anti-trans stuff, and that's what's really problematic. And
agreed. Have you seen Disclosure?
No.
I would, oh my gosh, I would so much like recommend watching this. It's basically the history of trans representation in Hollywood. And Laverne Cox is very prominently, like, I feel like it's a movie about her. So it's like I see that stuff and I'm like, it makes me actually not want to watch movies that were like produced before the mid 2000s. Cause like there were so many movies that are like said like, hey, like, look at how shitty this was. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't like that. I didn't realize how bad that was at the time when I like Ace Ventura, you know what I mean? Like
Ace Ventura, when it came out, for me and my friend group, and it wasn't just the influence of my friend group and me trying to be a guy or whatever, I legitimately loved that movie. I watched it so much, I could quote so much of it. Looking back, it's like, it's problematic. It's very anti-trans. And the thing that sucks about it is it's twofold. I'm just going to go off on these tangents and these tirades. I apologize. You're the guest. I should let you speak at some point.
No, I want to talk to you. Don't be selfish. I want to talk to you. I want to hear your opinions.
So all of the people are very transphobic, and they're very strongly and right out in your face anti-trans. That's the message, because when they find out that she has a penis, they all like vomit, right?
Yeah. It's
like
the most
it's so
disgusting thing.
horrible that this woman was a man at one point or has a penis, is trans, you know, yada yada. The other thing that is also horrible about it is that this woman is not trans.
Yes.
This is
it's
somebody
so bad.
This is somebody who transitioned and put this on as a cover to commit murder. That was her intentions. Like, she was intending
like
to
the
kill
narrative,
Dan
right?
Reno.
It's the narrative, yeah.
And so she wasn't even actually trans. There was no indication in the movie that she actually identified as a woman. It was all a ruse and just a way to get to this. So it's like, it's bad on multiple levels. And yet, and so it's like, it's tough because I loved this movie so much, and it was such a big part of my life in high school. And I actually, for a moment, had a really good connection, you know, just one step removed, you know, playing the Kevin Bacon game. I had a friend who did a lot of work for Tom Shadyac and had a strong connection to him. And I was really considering trying to see if my connection to that friend was strong enough and that his connection to Tom Shadyac was still strong enough to see if it would if there was a way to get him onto this show to talk about that. Because one of the main things when we talk to people of our age that have experienced that, Ace Ventura was one of the things that made coming out as trans difficult for so many of us.
Yeah. It like set a lot of us back, and society, I feel like society back when it comes to trans people. I totally, and that's what's good about it's disclosure talks about so many situations, even in the early 2000s, where it was like the worst thing you could be was trans. Like that was the worst thing. And I mean, I think like I'm in a field that and I feel like most fields unfortunately this way, but that exemplifies like the gold standard is being a man. And I think part of it is rooted in the fact that women are viewed as inferior in general. So how could a man want to be the inferior thing? Like there's so many, like, I think layers of why it's wrong on so many fronts, apart from the trans, like the horribleness towards specific like minority of people. It's also like horrible to women. Like how could that be the worst thing you could be as a woman, you know?
Yeah, the way it manifests from our misogynist culture is really brutal. That message that the worst thing you could be is a woman as a man. Like that's the worst, that, you know.
Which is the best thing, let's be honest.
Yeah. The most biting comment you could say is to call somebody
you throw like a girl.
A vagina, you throw like a girl, you're a bitch,
yeah.
You know, all that stuff.
Like that, like stuck with me, like that the biggest insult in Sandlot was you throw like a girl. Like that was the biggest insult. That was like the worst thing you could ever say. Like it's interesting because I feel like that's another like thing to like unpack one day about how like every time I saw something related to like trans or women, that's the part of the movie I remembered growing up. Like I remembered only those parts. Like that was the part I remember from Sandlot. And then the fact that the kid almost killed himself to kiss a girl, which I thought that was ridiculous, pretended to drown so he could make out with the lifeguard. Those are the two things I remember from that movie. The shitty parts and then the weird part.
So I have a mixed story about Throw Like a Girl. So I had an experience with my father last year, maybe the year before, in his maybe it was a couple years ago, of him trying to come to grips and accept the fact that I'm trans.
Mm-hmm.
And in his own way, and I sort of felt, because his tone is always off. He's not a phenomenal communicator, especially emotionally. I felt there was a little bit of a dig in him saying it. Like there was a little bit of a dig in the intention, but it ended up being unintentionally validating for me, because one of the things he said was, yeah, I always thought you threw like a girl. And like I said, there was something about the way he said it in the context where it sort of felt like it was supposed to be an insult. And I, of course, took it as like,
yeah, it's like, okay, that's like, I don't know how I feel about it, but it is a little validating.
Oh, and then I had then very recently, oh my God, I miss softball. My teams have not been able to get their shit together, and I've not played in about a year. Oh, I'm worried. I'm 48 now, and I'm worried about losing those skills. I'm worried about losing everything. But on one of the co-ed teams I play on, I was throwing with somebody, and she was actually asking me like, you know, how did you get so good at throwing? Like you throw so strong. And I was just like, again, in the context, I was like, I don't think she knows I'm trans.
Oh my
And
gosh,
again,
isn't that the most validating, like, thing ever?
it was so validating. And then at the same time, it brought up that old terror of like, oh my God, am I going to be outed? What's going to happen if I'm outed in this situation? Like, what's she going to think then? But yeah, it was mostly, I was just going with the validation of like, well, I've been playing softball. I had been playing softball at that point for about 10 years. And I said, I play dodgeball too. So like, I just throw all the time. And I'm like, also it's a matter of, you know, throwing with your body, not your arm. You know, you get, look at the really good pitchers, their butts and their thighs are really huge. And you know, that was the whole thing of like, you throw from your legs.
Right. Yeah, I actually like, I've been running and I mean, it's like amazing. There's all these like little validating things that happen. One of the things that is weirdly validating that I've realized recently, is, I have a coworker, that I'm actually really good friends with. He's one of, 3 men that I've been able to connect with in my entire life. He's great. But we have had a similar body type, similar BMI and all that stuff. And I was at work with him and I like his arms. I'm like, Jesus, like those veins are huge. And then I remembered, and I've been realizing this recently that I'm not veiny anymore. I'm like soft. And I still exercise all the time, but just like not having visible veins in my arm is like validating. And then when I have like a young person, like we just went to our first game. We actually had the kids with us. We hung out with a group of young people. It was actually great. It was Pride at the Park, so it's like a Pride baseball game for the Padres.
Yeah,
and it was my wife and I, my 3 kids, and then there was 6 other lesbian couples with us, and they were all like at most early 30s. Like the oldest one was probably like 30. And we've been actually getting this question a lot, which I love this question. Is we've been getting asked, like, did you guys do IUI? Um, and so to me, that's so validating because you don't ask that unless you assume that they're both cis women. So we've been getting asked that question a lot, and I'm really pushing my wife to say yes, because technically it was IUI. It's not lying. You got Yeah. It wasn't yeah, but yeah, technically though, that's what it is, right? When like the I guess like non-medicine assisted way to get pregnant, like it's the same thing. It's like, but you're using like different instruments to do it. It's still IUI. Oh, intrauterine insemination. So it's essentially inserting semen into the cervix, into the uterus through the cervix. It's It's how we had them. That's exactly how we had them. So yes, it was IUI. But it's good. It's been validating that and the little things are like that are so validating. Like, yeah, even though you throw like a girl, like that would be validating for me. Yes, we were just on the inside of third base. That's right. I had to think about it because like like you go with kids, you're just running after the kids. And yeah, we were on the grass there. It was yeah, it was actually really nice. Yeah, like it wasn't my first game that I've gone to, but it was definitely the first one the kids went to, and it was very nice. And it was like actually it was amazing to see so many like older queer people. Because like when we go out, like here in San Diego and Hillcrest, we mostly see people that are younger than us. Like the vast majority of queer people that we hang out with are significantly younger than us and don't have kids. And so to see like our age and older was like really, really nice in our home city. Yeah. Nice. It is nice. I know. Yeah. I do love it. It was a good experience. We'll definitely be there next year. Well, we're gonna get better seats because I, like, signed up too late, and so that's why we were on the, like, field and not in the stands, which the stands would've been nice. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Was it the Padres game? Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will look. Yeah, I'm curious about it. I mean, I feel like San Diego's like a little, it's obviously smaller than LA, at least the city itself, not the county. Um, but there's, I don't know, it's pretty queer. Just and the only places that tend to be like a lot less are like North County. And then anything close to a military base tends to be a little less queer. But I mean, even outside of Hillcrest, like there's usually a pride thing somewhere. Like usually. No. Well, you've been very, very engaging, and, a phenomenal host from my perspective, because I can hear everything. Alright. Something about the Angels or Dodgers or something, Orioles maybe? No, no, no. It's, something I was kind of forced to do, and I watched hockey when I played hockey, but besides that, like, um I love drag race, and so that is like my sports is drag race. All Stars just got announced this season, and I am so excited about this season. Um, I mean, I don't know that I'm very excited about who won the last like regular season, but All Stars. I think I'm going to predict right now that Gottmik's going to win the whole thing. Just I'm going to say it right now. Yeah, that's fair. That's me with baseball. Amazing. Okay. Mhm. Aw, yay. Yeah, I see, okay. I don't know, I think we just got talking about things we like. Oh, yeah. I was actually very upset because it was the second or third season. They were in Temecula, which is where I work. And they filmed the summer I got there, so I didn't know anything about it. So like that episode, like I know where everything is. Like I go there. Like, yeah, it was so yeah. I was this season, or this like I think this season, like they just announced like who it's gonna be, like which queens it's gonna be, and they're great. I feel a little bit bad that Shangela's not there because she was just like such a good entertainer and she just had a good spirit. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I love the show and I think it's like very helpful for the straights to be able to like get to know us and to know that like, hey, like we're not that, we're not the things you think we are. We're actually regular people. We just dress nicer than you. I'm just kidding. Fair. Mhm. Eureka. Yeah, she's from Tennessee. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. I can hear you. Oh, no. Well, I can hear you.
How could you hear me? I wonder. You could hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear everything you're saying. I've never not been able to hear you talk.
I've been talking for a very long time. I am so sorry, everybody. I had my mic off, but with my mic off, you shouldn't be able to hear me. That makes me wonder if the audio for them is coming through. So what audio are you hearing? Are you hearing just crap audio from me then?
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't sound horrible, but
what have you been getting? I don't even know. Because my mic was literally off. So there's no way you should have been able to hear me. And that's why, like, the fact
I've
that
been
you
able
can
to
hear
hear
me didn't illuminate for me that my mic was off. So everybody out that's been watching has not been able to hear me for, what is it, 15 minutes? Oh my God.
Oh, I'm glad somebody said something. I'm glad we realized it.
I'm bad at this game today, y'all. I am so sorry. So we're back. I'm back. I don't know.
I'm sure it sounded like I was just insane, just like having a full-on conversation with my mind. That's probably what it sounded like to everybody.
And
I
the problem is
swear
there isn't
that-
even a Peanuts like wah 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 when I'm
Yeah.
talking.
I swear that
it is.
It probably wasn't voices in my head I was talking to. It was probably you. We were talking about We Were Here. I think that was like the main thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Jada Essence Hall, she won the season during COVID. Priyanka won the first season of Canada's Drag Race. Sasha, I believe, won season 9 or 10. And then Latrice also, I think, like they're all Drag Race winners. Like they won the competition, like all of them.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
Latrice
know.
performs in Vegas for the RuPaul Live, like right now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And are
It's gonna
those
be a good
trans women
show.
or
None of them are trans.
none of them are trans? So they're just the
Yeah.
people that are being
As far
featured
as,
on.
as far as
We're
I
Here.
know, none of them are trans. They're all just very good drag queens.
Anyways, if you missed it because I'm a donkey, we've been talking a lot about We're Here. Wonderful, fun stuff. You know, yeah, good.
Yeah.
I need to stop with the wine. I'm officially drunk now. This is fun. Y'all get to see drunk Emily. I don't think I usually
Yay.
get drunk on the show, but
Today's
something
the
about
day.
this barefoot bubbly. I think I'm in my second or third glass, but it is hitting hard.
Send her more. Somebody send her more of it. We wanna see her more drunk.
Can recommend. We did not talk about what you're drinking. What is the white wine you're drinking?
Oh, it's something, I don't know. It was delicious. I think it was a Trader Joe wine.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. The bottle's back in the kitchen.
I do want to do a little plug for Barefoot. And no, they're not sponsoring, and yes, they should. They have been supporters of the LGBT community for a very long time, and each year I love it because they release Barefoot Bubbly Rosé in a super gay bottle. Like it's got the rainbows all over it, and I love it. And yeah,
I will check it out.
Ember, are you familiar with the Transverse News bloopers reel that has me saying more wine perhaps? I love that. That's one of the more fun things that has come from me doing shows is the fact that I'm no good at it. So I have wonderful blooper reels. We've had a lot of fun with those. Y'all, I need some help. What are some questions that you have for Jailyn? Because she and I are simpatico. Like one of my best friends is Amber, who is really good friends with Jailyn, and that's how I met Jailyn. And the three of us are all just really simpatico. So I feel like I could just talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I just saw that we're at time now. I don't know about you, but I could go for another 3. It's up to you.
Me too.
Okay.
We just need to hang out in person. That's what we need to do. We need to do like how fun would it be to do like an in-person like episode where we're in the same room?
The thing is I am honestly I'm drunk enough to be honest with y'all. Cheers. I'm very tired of Zoom shows.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I've been watching a couple that I really enjoy though, and maybe I just haven't been exposed to it as much. I mean, it's how I've been able to do this show. It's been wonderful. I've interviewed people from the UK, from Australia, pretty much just those overseas. Ashley Adamson was in Japan, I believe. Nice.
But it's wonderful. I need to get in a studio with 3 cameras and have my guests there. My poor friends here. I run a trans peer group. I've met probably 30 or 40 trans people through that group. And I do not have them on my show because it's like, it's a waste to have you on a virtual, like a Zoom show when you're right freaking here. So I want to save you for when I have a studio and can do it. And yet I don't have a studio yet. So if y'all know of a studio in Ventura County that I could use, please let me know. Hopefully that'll happen sometime, at least by the end of this year. But yes, I would love in-person stuff. I'm working on a deal with somebody to come on. We'll have more content on here, but I want the in-person. I want the studio. I want the professional thing. What else? How did you get into, so you went down the medical route long before you came out. And like you said, you were Rookie of the Year. You got out of your residency and went straight into public speaking. And were
started doing it in residency.
Was that you were in residency stuff?
That's when I started speaking.
So how did you get to that level? Because it sounds like you were good to go. It wasn't. I don't know even when it was. After I came out as trans, I decided I had a story to tell. So I thought I would join Toastmasters, which is a public speaking training organization. And even still, like, I was absolutely terrified of the idea. It was the thing that I was most afraid of in my life. What was it for you that got you to that point of being able to speak in front of these people?
So, like there's always good with bad, right? One of the things, I grew up evangelical Christian. And one of the things is music is actually pretty big. Because, it's all about like sensations and feelings rather than like data and evidence. I started playing the violin when I was 4. I was actually a music major in college. So I've been playing in front of every church I've ever gone to since I was like essentially a toddler. So getting in front of somebody is not something that has ever really, at least as an adult, doesn't really give me that much stress. But what has helped me, I think, apart from the like stage fright, is just realizing, and I think it's through like performing eventually I switched over to viola, but performing the viola in front of people is just knowing your shit. And if you just like know what you're going to talk about and anticipate things, it's probably going to go well. And then the third component is I'm very judgy of other people secretly. And so like when I was in med school and in college, when I'd get like a shitty professor I'd have to listen to, I was like, why do they say so much? Like, why is their screen so horrible? Like, why is there yellow letters on blue backgrounds? So I would just take these like notes. And then like when I finally like was started to get lecturing gigs, I would just do the opposite of what I didn't like. And then that's kind of like how it happened. I took courses and all this stuff. Like I have training also in it. But it was a lot of experience. I tallied them up because I should keep track because like for academics, that's actually how you get promoted. But I'm coming up on, I think as of like the end of 2023, I think I've given close to 300 local, national, and international lectures in my like adult career, which I started late because that's how long it takes to get through med school and residency. But yeah, I think it's just like experience, honestly. And then not giving a shit also. I think that helps a lot. It's just like not getting nervous and not really like, I don't know, people cough and people might comment, you just move on. Like, I think that helps too.
Yeah, not giving a shit what the audience thinks helps. So are you to the point where you are able to make money off of your speaking gigs?
Yeah. I actually like, I don't do a lot of free ones anymore. Cause I'm not new in my career. Like I've been a physician since 2012. And I also have I have an education business. And I sell my educational product to residencies and medical providers. So yeah, like it helps. And it's kind of nice because about once every month, every 1 month and a half or so, I get paid to lecture somewhere. So I get to travel. Like if I'm traveling, I'm probably teaching something, because I don't really like paying for my own travel. So yeah, it's not like I'm not getting like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's like usually enough to like pay for the trip at least, which is nice.
Oh, fun. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to get to that point, and I kind of, I just haven't figured that out yet. But I would really like to. I think that's a fun thing. I love the travel and all of that. And honestly, I don't feel like it wasn't that it wasn't available in Toastmasters. It was there. I should have learned it, but I don't think I improved my speaking that much. What I did do though, that was the key, was I pretty much eliminated all the fear. And I've gotten to the point where I can, if I was somewhere just random and they're like, Emily, could you come up and talk for a few minutes on X? As long as I sort of was familiar with the topic, I would be fine with it. And that is mind blowing because of the amount of fear. And the thing I always tell people, think back to high school. You would do this thing where they would go through each student or maybe more middle school, each student would read a paragraph from a story or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was terrified of that. I was super afraid of when it came to my turn and all of that. And I still don't read aloud that well these days, honestly. But it's just funny to go from there to here, to be able to do this show live in front of folks, and to be able to, for Trans Pride in my local area here, which I hosted this year, I got up in the middle of downtown, the downtown of our local city, and did a whole thing. And I had people from the county and from the city there delivering proclamations, and I did the intro and the outro to it, and I was totally fine. It's like, it's so bizarre to have gotten there. So hopefully I'll get
You've gotten your reps in.
Yes,
I think that's really what it is just practicing getting your reps in, and then you realize that you can do it.
Hopefully I'll get to the point where people will actually pay me for it, because I could definitely use that. So we need to wrap up here pretty quick, because I could just talk to you for 7 hours. Talk a little bit more about that education business. I don't know very much about it. What is the focus of it? Is it specific to LGBT or trans, or is it completely separate of that?
It's completely separate to that. So it's specifically ultrasound education for point of care providers. So it's essentially not a radiologist. So it's ultrasound for a non-radiologist, essentially. We still use radiology scans in medicine, like they're the gold standard. But we do it at the bedside. A lot of it for us is procedures. So it dramatically decreases the complication rate, and you can imagine if you can see the needle entering a blood vessel, or depositing anesthetic around a nerve, or draining fluid from around the heart or the lungs. You're not just like blindly stabbing using the ultrasound. Like, there's no reason to not use it, but a lot of people aren't trained in it. So that's kind of like specifically what I teach. Although I am obviously, like, I'm trying to pivot into doing more advocacy work. There's so many people that talk about, like what it is to be trans. And so kind of my tilt, my, little thing that I want to focus on, is transgender care for medical providers, because that isn't really done very well. For instance, like, what do you do when a trans person comes into the emergency department and they have chest pain? Like, what are things that you need to worry about? Like, that's what I kind of want to pivot into. And I've done well. I've so far, I think I've lectured in 4 different states on transgender care. And I had I think last week. It was either last week or week before last. I did a lecture for UCLA. And then I was in New Orleans for a national conference. That was last week. The UCLA was the week before that. So they're slowly picking up, because I think it's like a deficit that I don't really see. And I think that I have the, I guess, experience in that. I have an MD at the end of my name, so I have that. And I don't think there's a whole lot of physicians that do that lecture that are trans. I know 4 other trans EM doctors. One's in Canada. There's a few, there's a couple, there's one trans man ER doctor that I know just like through Instagram. But I don't think there's a whole lot of us out. And I'm hoping that we can kind of like change that.
Is that Ben? Dr. Ben?
The one I'm maybe he's a FIGS ambassador. That's actually like where I found him, actually. It might be.
So it seems like the one of the main issues is, and this might be kind of what you're focusing on, what you're helping folks with, is how to take a person who's come in who's trans and treat their body with what is actually part of their physiology, while still honoring and being sensitive to their gender identity. And I feel like that would be the key struggle there.
Yeah, the data with trans people in medical like environments is depressing. I don't know if you've read through the preliminary stuff from the trans survey, But it still sucks. It's still like most trans people don't like going to doctors because we're mean, and I mean, like, I'm part of the medical community, so that's why I say we're mean. I don't think I am.
You're part of the
But
problem.
yeah, it's all my fault.
All physicians are bastards. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I believe you. I'm on board with that. Actually, I've met a lot of doctors, and yeah, just kidding. I love all my physician friends, unless you're also an asshole, and then I don't like you. But that's irrespective of your medical training. Probably you're just an asshole. It's one of the things. It's kind of crazy. Like, just this last year, like 3 months ago, I went in as a trans woman who, and I used the word I completed transition last year, and that's like for non-trans people, because we're always transitioning, you know what I mean? I just like legally changed my name and gender last year. But so I'm legally a woman. I look like this. And I had a horrible experience at a clinic that treats trans people specifically. So it like happens to me. So there's a lot of training that we need to do. And I think that's the problem. It's that there's no training. I think sometimes people get so uptight and they get so nervous, and they want to be nice, but they don't know how. And then they hear like, we want to murder your children in the bathroom, and they don't actually know what they should believe. And then they see me, and I think they get confused because they're like, oh, she's nice, and she's got an MD behind my name, because for whatever reason, like, I don't know how it happened, but at the I'm not going to mention it, but the whole healthcare facility that I go to, it's like a big group down here. There's an MD at the end of my name, which I don't think I told anybody I was a doctor, but it says MD at the end of my name. But I still had a shitty experience. And so like, if I'm doing this, I can't imagine somebody who is, like maybe passes less well going to an emergency department in like rural Alabama. Like, I can't imagine, like, I would almost rather die than like have a medical emergency and have to go to a hospital that I know is going to treat me like shit. Like, I don't want to, I mean, it's so sad, but I feel like it needs to be said. Have you heard, I'm blanking on her first name. Was it Tyla? Hold on, I'm Googling it right now. Trans woman dies medics. Let's try that. Yeah, Tyra Hunter. So I don't know. Have you heard of the story of Tyra Hunter? So she died in 1995. She was in a car wreck, and she passed actually. But she complained that she couldn't feel her legs, which is horrible from a medical. Like, if I hear an accident and a patient can't feel their legs, that's a devastating spinal cord injury. It's a big fucking deal. The medics got her out of the car, and obviously, if you're that much in a car wreck, like, your clothes are everywhere. The medics saw a penis and essentially proceeded to make fun of her as she's paralyzed, newly paralyzed, make fun of her because she had a penis. Continue to get made fun of in the emergency department, and after like 12 hours of just being in the hallway with a severe spinal cord injury, and because they didn't care about her, she also had what's called a tension pneumothorax. So it's if your lung collapses, the pressure in the opposite lung pushes essentially, and eventually will cause compression of your heart because it's a fixed cavity, your chest wall. And she died essentially because she was trans. That's why she died. And that was multiple medical providers that didn't take her seriously just because she was trans. It wasn't like I remember 1995. It wasn't that long ago.
You know what was popular at the time?
Ace Ventura.
Ace Ventura.
Yeah. So I mean, and that is like my profession, which I take a lot of pride. I actually love being a doctor. I still love going to work, truly. I love helping people. I love being there for people. And to hear stories like that, and to, hear surveys of trans people, it's something that, like, I get sad about it, but as I mentioned in the first part, I'm very actions oriented, and I have the ability to address that. So within the medical community, that's kind of what I want to, like, kind of shift my focus to, we're regular people, and we are on medications that you might not know what to do with, but that doesn't mean that you can't be polite. That's basically it. That's my spiel.
Well, Jailyn, as we've proven many times, I could sit here and talk to you for hours and hours and hours.
Aw.
I should let you go. I've got other obligations, mainly Fortnite, but other things as well.
Fair. I have to wake up at 5 tomorrow. I have a shift.
Ooh, brutal. Well, I need to let you go then. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on. And yes, we must
Likewise.
hang out soon.
Right on. Well, thanks so much for the opportunity, and enjoy Fortnite. And I'll enjoy probably an episode of Drag Race and dinner.
And then bed, because you got to get
And then
fucking
bed.
ready. All right, hun. Good night.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that's it. Thank you so much for coming and being here and putting up with my drunkenness. I usually don't, this doesn't happen. I usually don't get drunk. Even if I do have a little bit of fun with wine. We've got some folks watching in YouTube. I'm so glad you're here and have been able to watch an actual live stream. It's sort of rare that we do these. The intent is to do more of them. So if you, yeah, I mean, we'll do more of them. I've been streaming live on Twitch forever. And then, of course, the episodes are available as a podcast. So check that out. Just anywhere you get your wonderful podcasts. I am going to quit yapping because I don't think I'm going to make a lot of sense right now. And I think what we'll do is to just shut it down and we'll see you next Tuesday. Let me check really fast, though, because I know who my next guest is. And I can at least give you that information to give you that little tidbit, little thing to kind of keep you satiated in the moment until next week. The trans mask on next week, Ben Green. Ben Green will be our guest next week. So come back same time next week. We'll do it again. As always, wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on and supporting the show. There are lovely ways to support the show financially. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thetransverse. As I mentioned before, we have some really fun merchandise up at thetransverse.net. thetransverse.etsy.com. Go get your transphobia, the fear of people infinitely cooler than you shirt. We have Transgender Show Phoenix merch up there. I have a wonderful hoodie that is my favorite hoodie. Has the Transgender Show Phoenix right here. The Transgender Show logo that you see right here going down the sleeve. It's a very cool, really good quality sweatshirt. I couldn't recommend it more highly. It is one of my favorites. And all kinds of other stuff. Stand by your trans shirts, stickers, all kinds of things. So, lots of, like I said, several ways to support the Transverse. And the most important one is for you to just be here and watch and enjoy the show. I love you all, and we will see you.